Okay. Good morning, good noon, good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Wei Fan. I'm a professor of civil and environmental engineering department here at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I'm also the director of CAMMSE, aka Center for Advanced Multimodal Mobility Solution and Education. It's my great honor to welcome you, our CAMMSE and CADC family members, colleagues and friends, and general participants from all across the country. Even though we were unable to meet in person during these unprecedented times, I'm truly glad that we're still able to proceed with this virtual summit. Thank you for attending our third annual CAMMSE Research Symposium with the main purpose to share results and findings of a recent and ongoing research funded by CAMMSE. As many of you know, CAMMSE is a 5-year multi-campus Tier 1 University Transportation Center funded by U.S. Department of Transportation beginning in November 2016 under the FAST Act. We are a consortium of 5 universities with us, University of North Carolina at Charlotte as the lead, the University of Texas at Austin, the University of Connecticut, the Washington State University, Pullman, and Texas Southern University, each with unique records as education hubs engaging diverse populations and nurturing the success of all students. The theme of CAMMSE is to address the FAST Act priority areas of improving mobility of people and goods by conducting multidisciplinary, multimodal research, education and workforce development, and technology transfer. It's already been 4 years now since CAMMSE was established, and significant progress has been made in all these activities. I'm confident that this symposium will provide a great opportunity for CAMMSE researchers, graduate students, and the community at large who are interested in multimodal mobility to share their recent and ongoing research in multimodal mobility solutions. As you might have seen from the booklet, this 1.5 day symposium program includes 3 technique sessions and 1 student lightning talk sessions, as well as 1 workshop session. On the first day, the morning sessions will be on emerging mobility service, technology, and operations, and connected and autonomous vehicle and machine learning applications. Then in the early afternoon, we will have a graduate student lightning talk session. And after that, we will have our third technique session focusing on improving multimodal mobility, leveraging data and advanced analytics. On the second day, we will have 2 workshops entitled Are E-Scooters a Transit Last Mile Solutions? And Signal Timing and Geometry Design at the Intersections with Contra-Flow Left Turn Lanes. All sessions and workshops will offer professional development hours. In closing, I hope that this virtual event will provide an opportunity to exchange ideas, foster collaborations, and generate new ideas. On behalf of the Symposium Organizing Committee, we are glad to have you join us, and I hope you will enjoy this symposium. Thank you. And now, before we start with our first technique session, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items. First, you will be muted throughout the session. Second, if you have any question regarding how to earn professional development hours, please contact Dr. Martin Kane at martin.kane@uncc.edu. Third, all sessions will be and are being recorded. We will share a link with you after the event is complete. We welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share them with colleagues. And at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Lownes, who is the moderator of the first technique session. Nick, it's all yours now. So is Nick here? Nick not signing yet. Okay, so I'll step in, be the temporary moderator as of now. Okay. Our first technique session. We're glad that we have 4 speakers. The first session again is on emerging mobility service technologies and operations. And our first speaker will be Dr. Randy Machemehl from the University of Texas at Austin. So let's welcome Dr. Machemehl.
Thank you, Wei. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. I am going to need to share my screen here. We'll see how that works. Just a second here. How's everybody this morning?
It's great.
I have an old computer, and so it requires some special care. But we'll get there. All right, share screen. And I'm still not there yet. Now, can you see that?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. All right. Okay, everybody see the slides? All right, well, let's see. We have been inundated with e-scooters at the University of Texas and in Austin. And we've spent quite a lot of time and effort trying to figure out exactly what all this means. And one of the things that we've been concerned about is basically safety problems. And we have noticed in just casual observations that e-scooters typically travel significantly faster than pedestrians. So when e-scooters merge with pedestrians on sidewalks, there's a significant speed differential, and we've worried about that. In fact, one of our doctoral candidates, well, I'll get to that in a second. The other problem that we worry about is the speed differential between e-scooters and cars when they travel on the road. In fact, along that line, one of our good graduate students from Alabama, as a matter of fact, had a crash. He was riding an e-scooter, and a car hit him. He suffered a concussion and a broken arm and had to have surgery to get his arm repaired. Anyway, the University of Texas does a good job of tracking e-scooter crashes. We have a good database. We've looked at that fairly extensively. And that led us to wonder just what fraction of the time do e-scooters travel on sidewalks? What fraction of the time do they travel on bike lanes where we'd really like them to be? And what fraction of the time do they travel on roads? And so that led us to this particular piece of work. The research team here, the lady at the top here, Natalia Zuniga Garcia, is the real brains behind this work. And in fact, what I'm talking to you today about is some work that she did as part of her dissertation, and she's defending that dissertation tomorrow afternoon. So this is very new stuff. Natalia Ruiz-Jury is the director of the Network Modeling Center in the Center for Transportation Research. Ken Perrine is a programmer, and he did a lot of good work on this work. And of course, you know me. As I said, when I started, we've been just sort of overcome by a very large number of e-scooters here in Austin, Texas. And this is a list of, and I think we actually have added a couple of vendors since this slide since these numbers were prepared. But if you add all these together, we had, prior to the March shutdown, about 15,000 e-scooters in Austin, Texas. And I think that number actually increased a little bit above that. Right now, and of course, in most cases around the country, the number of e-scooters that you see is much, much less. But I imagine that is going to change in the not too distant future. But at any rate, through mid-March of this past year, we had more than 15,000 e-scooters. E-scooters on every doorstep, on every block face, pretty much everywhere you go around the UT campus area, and in fact, in the downtown area as well. E-scooters are everywhere. And they were very, very, very heavily utilized. In fact, so heavily utilized on campus that Parking and Traffic Services on UT campus has developed special parking areas for them. And as you would expect, everybody that rides an e-scooter doesn't necessarily look for one of these special parking places. In fact, a lot of e-scooter riders don't even look for a special parking place at all. They just jump off the e-scooter wherever it might be most convenient and drop the e-scooter right there. And that has led to some other problems that we've dealt with on UT campus and in the Austin area. In fact, e-scooters lying all over the sidewalk so that people tumble over them. Anyway, it's interesting. Lots of e-scooters. And as I note here on the slide, probably the heart of e-scooter activity in the Austin area is the UT campus. Nearly a very large fraction of those 15,000 scooters, in fact, find their way to the Austin campus. In fact, Parking and Traffic Services at UT has become so concerned about the crash problem with e-scooters that they have actually worked with the vendors to provide an electronic speed reduction for e-scooters. So e-scooters on UT campus cannot exceed 8 miles per hour in speed. And it's not a regulation, it's done electronically. So if you're operating in the area where the speed limit is applied, and you're riding an e-scooter, you will feel the e-scooter slow down because it automatically does that. Okay. One of the first things we did was a survey of e-scooter users, and the survey was administered throughout pretty much the Austin area, but a very large fraction of the e-scooter responses came from UT faculty and staff. And as you might expect, the e-scooters are primarily used by students. We were a little surprised here that there were more graduate students, at least, that responded to the survey than undergraduate students. You find very few faculty and staff. It's a young person's transportation mode. In fact, we asked about age, and nearly all of the e-scooter respondents to our survey were under 34 years old. Not surprising. I've ridden an e-scooter one time. In fact, my daughter has an e-scooter. Her husband gave her for Christmas, and so I rode her e-scooter. That's the only e-scooter riding I've done. And again, it's a young person's mode. In this survey, we actually have done 2 surveys. In this particular one, the fraction of males and females who responded to the survey was approximately equal, almost equal numbers of responses for males and females. The other survey, which I'll talk about tomorrow, the males outdistanced females fairly significantly. And this was a bit of a surprise. I would characterize most of the trip purposes that were reported in our survey as being sort of work trip purposes. Go to class, go to work, go home, go to a meeting. Those represent the vast majority of the trips. You see social entertainment, recreation down there, but it's not a very large number and a fairly small fraction. So I would basically characterize the trip purpose for e-scooter trips, at least reported in our survey, as being sort of related to work. And I was surprised about that because I really thought these things were primarily recreational vehicles, but doesn't turn out to really be the case at all. And we asked what mode did the scooter trip replace, and as you would expect, the vast majority of the trips that the scooters replaced were walk trips. You'll note that there is a connection to bus, non-UT shuttle, and UT shuttle. And if you're not familiar with the UT bus operation here, the university has a relationship with Capital Metro, the local transit provider. And through that relationship, the university buys service for the UT shuttles. And we also have the ability to ride any Capital Metro bus and just slide our ID card for no out-of-pocket cost. And so that sort of encourages public transportation use. So, as I said, when we started this thing, the basic idea here was to try to see if we could figure out where e-scooter users ride their scooters. And so we obtained a lot of data. I'll talk more about that data in just a moment. And the primary objective of the research here was to determine what fraction of the e-scooter usage occurs on sidewalks, what fraction on bike lanes, and what fraction on roadways. And then we went a little bit further with that, which I'll talk about more in a moment. We had several primary data sources. One, the city of Austin requires that all e-scooter vendors are regulated by the city, and the city requires that they keep records of trips for all trips. So we were able to obtain about 80,000 e-scooter trips made over about a year. And that represents, although it's a large number, it represents a very small number of the total e-scooter trips. And by the way, we do know exactly how many e-scooter trips are made because they're all recorded. So we had trip trajectory data from one e-scooter vendor representing about 80,000 trips. We got GIS, Geographic Information System, inventory data for infrastructure, which amounted to about 11 million location points. And then the trick was to match these two things together. Oops. We looked over about a 1 year time span from March 2019 to February 2020, just before COVID caused everything to shut down. And this is total number of e-scooter monthly trips recorded by the city across the whole Austin area. And you see we're up in the neighborhood of 800,000 in March 19, maybe a gentle decline, but we're still up in the neighborhood of 400,000 or 500,000 monthly trips by February 2020. This one provider represented a small fraction of all, but we used only one provider to try to have a reasonably decent cross section. And this guy is providing somewhere between about 6,000 and 10,000 monthly trips. Small fraction of the total, but still a large number. And again, the data runs from March 19 to February 20. With these data, we were able to determine exactly where the e-scooter trip origins were, and we related those to census tracts in the Austin area. The UT campus is pretty much in the center of this picture, about right here. And the darker the color indicates more trip origins. And so as you move outward from the central portion of the city, the number of e-scooter trip origins decreases, as you would expect. And here's an example of what we did. From the data that is recorded by the city for every e-scooter trip, we could track that trip and, using the infrastructure database, determine whether or not the trip was occurring on a sidewalk, a bike lane, or a roadway. And here's an example of a trip that begins on the south side of Town Lake, travels along the lake, crosses a bridge, and comes back. And for this trip, about 2% of the total distance was on a sidewalk. About 43% was on a bike lane, and about 20% was on a roadway. And as I noted earlier, where our concern really is the fraction of all e-scooter travel that occurs on sidewalks and roadways because of a speed differential there. Here's another example. Unlike the first one, about 60%, this one is a little bit south of the lake, 60% of this trip was done on a sidewalk. 22% was done on a roadway, and practically none of it was done on a bike lane. We were able to compute vehicle miles of travel by e-scooters. And here is the summary for all the trips, the 80,000 that we tracked. And notice that by and large, roadway represents by far the largest number of vehicle miles, 26,000 vehicle miles of e-scooter travel on roadways. Sidewalks represent the next highest total, which is about half of the roadway total. And finally, bike lanes represent the least. And of course, that's bothersome because, again, we're concerned about the sidewalk and the roadway travel. We looked at the classification of the roadways used by the e-scooters. And here we have roadway classification ranging from local streets to interstate highways, and actually this is a non-zero number. That's surprising, but nevertheless it's non-zero. Notice that this big bar in the middle here is principal arterial, and that is very concerning because the principal arterial streets have the highest volume of traffic and the highest speeds, and so the likelihood of crashes is probably higher when the scooters use principal arterials than any of these lesser classes. We would hope that they would be operating predominantly on local streets or collectors where the volume and speeds are lower, but they tend to choose principal arterials that have the highest speed and the highest traffic volumes. When they travel on bike lanes, they don't necessarily choose the best bike lanes. I think it's pretty much just choosing a bike lane because it happens to be available, and they don't tend to worry a lot about riding comfort. So we've actually divided all of our bike lanes. We have a fairly significant network of bike lanes in Austin. And we divided the bike lanes by comfort level. This is a very comfortable situation, probably an off-street kind of bike lane, very, very comfortable. And this is a very minor trail where you'd have to hold your hand in front of you to keep the bushes from hitting you in the face. They choose something in the middle, typically. By far, most of the e-scooter trips are made on bike lanes that have medium comfort level, which is interesting. We plotted vehicle miles of travel by traffic zone area, and on the left you have sidewalk travel, in the middle bike lane travel, and on the right roadway travel. And all three of these tend to show essentially the same pattern. More vehicle miles traveled in the central portion of the city, significantly fewer vehicle miles traveled as you go outward from the central portion. And again, UT campus is somewhere right in this concentrated area. Speeds, e-scooter speeds. We were also able to measure e-scooter speeds from the data that we had because we had trajectory data. And again, these three plots show speeds that we were able to get from the data for sidewalks in the left picture, bike lanes, and roadways. And in all three of these, the darker the color, the higher the speed. And so the good news is speeds are lower in the central portion of the city, whether they're on sidewalks, bike lanes, or roadways. And the speeds get higher when you get further out. More about that later. We looked at speeds in a little bit more detail, and here is a box plot of speeds in kilometers per hour for weekdays versus weekends. And as you might expect, because most of these trips that the people are making during weekdays are sort of work-related trips, you would expect that the weekend speeds would be higher. And so they are, the weekday speeds are higher. But when you compare weekday speeds to weekend speeds, the fact is there's not a lot of difference. We also compare speeds here by the red box is sidewalks, green is bike lane, and blue is roadway. And pretty much whether it's weekday or weekend, it looks like the fastest speeds are on the bike lanes, and that's fine because that's really where we'd like for the e-scooters to be. Here's a more detailed look at weekday along the top versus weekend for time of day. And on weekdays, and pretty much the same story for weekends, speeds are highest during the AM peak time. Again, that fits with the fact that most of these trips are related to work trips. Again, the AM peak tends to have the highest speed, but the fact of the matter is, if you look across this whole box plot chart, everything is pretty much in the range of about 15 to 20 kilometers per hour. Weekends, the speeds are a little bit slower, but again, not a lot of difference. So my assumption is that when most people ride an e-scooter, they just go as fast as it will go. We looked in more detail at the speed variance across infrastructure. We did an analysis of variance of speeds across the three infrastructure types, between infrastructure, should really say among infrastructure types. And there's a significant, statistically significant variation across infrastructure types. Again, we looked at the box plots, we could see that, but again, from a practical point of view, the variation is really not very large. There is a statistically significant variation among times of day. We looked at that also. And for weekends, same thing. Significant difference across infrastructure types and significant difference across times of day. But again, from a practical point of view, there's really not a lot of difference. We went a little bit further with that and used Tukey's test to compare bikes versus sidewalks. And again, the difference is statistically significant. Compared roadway to sidewalk, again, statistically significant difference, and so forth. This is for weekdays, similar pattern for weekends. And again, although there are statistically significant differences among bikes, roadways, and sidewalks, the fact of the matter is the speeds are very similar, really, all the way across the board. Well, we learned that about 18% of the e-scooter trips are made on sidewalks. And again, as I noted earlier, that's a bit of a problem because they're traveling 9 to 10 miles per hour. Pedestrians are walking maybe 3.5 miles per hour. So there's a significant speed differential there. And we've had quite a number of crashes, e-scooters and pedestrians. So that's a problem. About 11% of the e-scooter trips are made on bike lanes, and that's really where we'd like them to be, but only about 11% are there. And the worst news here is that about 33% of the e-scooter trips are made on roadways, and they're significantly slower than cars. And again, as I showed you, you really tend to operate on the higher class roadways that have the higher speeds. And so the speed differential is significant. And so that's also a problem. So what we learned was pretty much what we had hypothesized, that a large fraction of e-scooter trips are made either on sidewalks or roadways, and that's more than half, according to this one vendor. And of course, we only looked at one of about 8 or 9 different vendors in town. What do we learn? Well, e-scooter users tend to ride at the lowest speeds in the downtown area, and that's good. They tend to ride faster during weekdays and AM peaks. That's bad because that's when we have higher automobile vehicle volume, and they're tending to ride a very large fraction of their trips on roadways. E-scooter users ride on pedestrian paths at lower speeds than on bike lanes and roadways, and that's good. But again, as I pointed out, the difference in speed between or among the 3 infrastructure types is really not very large at all. The good news out of this whole thing is that bike lanes have the highest e-scooter speeds, and that's where we'd really like for the e-scooters to be. But again, as we hypothesized, a very large fraction, about half of the e-scooter trips are not made on bike lanes at all. Questions?
Hello, Randy.
Yes.
This is E from Texas Southern. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you. It's a very interesting topic. I have a question about the e-scooter user and the pandemic. Do you think more and more people will use e-scooter during the pandemic? Because I know the people was worried about get a virus from the bus, so they may shift to this mode more.
I think that's a good possibility. Here on UT campus, although the campus is open, there are very, very few people. And I'm teaching a hybrid course this semester, and according to the rules, I'm supposed to come to campus and teach from my classroom, although it's all done using Zoom. And so I'm here twice a week. So I roam around the campus a bit looking for people. And I can tell you, there are almost no people on campus. The campus is open, the dorms are open, and supposedly we're teaching classes with people in residence, but I don't see any. So anyway, that's a long way of saying I also see very few e-scooters around and very few people riding e-scooters. Now, that's going to change somewhere in the, and hypothesis is very, very possible that we might have more people using e-scooters now rather than buses, because buses are infamous for being an environment in which the virus can be spread. But again, the total number of e-scooter users right now and since March is small. And so we're seeing a very small fraction of the amount of usage now that we saw before we started the pandemic operations.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, any more questions? Thank you, Dr. Machemehl.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
also, Dr. Nicholas Lownes just signed in. So Nick, you're the moderator of this session. So it's all yours, Nick, huh? If you're ready.
Hello, yes. I appreciate everybody's patience with me. It always seems like logistical challenges occur when I'm least equipped to accommodate them. So anyway, appreciate you covering for me, and sorry I wasn't on to introduce you, Dr. Machemehl. Anyway, our next speaker is Dr. Mehdi Azimi from Texas Southern University, and he's going to talk to us about, what do we got here? Bicycle network connectivity and accessibility. So Dr. Azimi, if you're able to share your screen, and we can get rolling.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you well now.
Okay, great. So let me share my screen, my presentation here. Okay. So I assume that you must see my slides here. Okay. Let me get it started. So the topic of my presentation today is the study on the effects of bike infrastructures on bicycle sharing system demand. I start my presentation with a little bit background, and then I will talk about the goal of my project and the objectives. I talk about the methodology, the study area, the data collection, analysis, and results, and I will finish with the conclusions. Background. I live in Houston, so the greater Houston metropolitan area, which is a rapidly growing region, is the fifth most populous metropolitan area in the United States. And the city of Houston, which is one of the principal city in this metropolitan area, itself has a population of about 2 million people, and in fact, it is the fourth most populous city in the nation. However, despite its growth and population, Houston is one of the least densely populated among the great cities. And like many post-war growth cities, the city is sprawling and very car dependent. And it is the reason that even with an improved transit system, traveling and commuting in the city remains dominated by cars, automobiles. Some major cities have improved their first mile, last mile transit problem by motivating the residents to use bicycles. However, in Houston, the low proportion of the people riding bicycles can be attributed in part to the existing fragmented network of the bike lanes. Those are the ones that are located on uncomfortable and dangerous streets throughout the city. So that was the reason that in the recent years, the city has started planning bicycle infrastructure improvements to help make the residents safer, healthier, more bike-friendly infrastructures, and encourage more people to ride bicycles by improving the infrastructures. So few projects has started and have been already completed during the last 1-2 years, and several other projects are in planning and design phases or under construction right now. Another focus of the city is in investment in the bike share system in Houston. So bike share system, as you know, is a shared use of a bicycle fleet by individuals on a short-term basis. So it has gained increasing interest in so many cities across the world and also in the United States. So the bike share provides users the ability to pick up a bicycle at any self-serve bike stations that is in the network of that city, and return that bicycle to any bike station that is close to their destination. This bike share system has a couple of benefits. For example, it provides the first mile, last mile connection to the other modes of transportation, so fills the gap between the trips that are too far to walk and not long enough to use public transit. It also reduces individual dependency on a car and therefore saves effective travel time from congested traffic. We can say it has also a great impact on environments. Switching from automobile to bicycles will greatly reduce emissions and improve the air quality. And the people may have concerns about the transportation, fuel costs. Bike share provides a relatively low cost on the way to travel. In other aspects, bike share also provides green jobs and access to business, which in turn will increase the economic development. So the last benefit that we can mention or list here is the bike share will certainly increase the individual health. So those are the benefits of the bike share, and City of Houston also have investments on the bike share system through the program that is named B-Cycle. So as a major city in the United States, Houston has begun its own bike share system in 2012. And as more people intended to ride bicycle, the system has expanded since then. So that is the program is the city's premier bike share program. It is an equitable access bike share program that fosters recreation, mobility, and personal wellness. And now the program started with 18 and 3 stations in 2012. But by the end of last year, 2019, it expanded to more than 700 bikes from 18 bikes that initially it had, and 3 stations changed to more than 100 stations throughout the city. And as you see in the pictures, there's 2 stations in Houston. With the stations have different dock number. Some of them that are located in the crowded area that are have more docks on the station. Some of them they have less docks. But the question that the city has is what is the impacts of bicycle infrastructure on bike share ridership? With those investments, how would be the impacts of the bicycle infrastructure on the bike share ridership? Because the city has investment in both of them, especially on the infrastructure recently. So the impacts of the bicycle infrastructure on bike share ridership is the question. If we go to the literatures, majority of the previous studies have been limited to the station level analysis. In fact, we had another study that I presented last year in the same symposium that was a station level analysis of bike share in Houston. Basically, for those type of studies, we look at the stations, location of stations, and we consider some information about the infrastructures or other information around those intersections. Basically, we look at the buffer with a certain dimension, size, and with that, and we do the regression analysis by having some dependent dependent variable, assuming that dependent variable is ridership activity, and independent variables are built-in environments that includes the existing bike lanes, along other variables in the regression. For example, the socio-demographic, household and employment density, bus stop, light rate station, for example, school, that are located in those buffer in that area, proximity of each station, trees nearby other stations, and even the number of docks in the stations. And also the other parameters can be land use, I mean the percentage of residential or commercial or governmental, medical, educational, or park in that buffer, in each buffer. And by having the regression analysis, we can find that how those variables has impacts on the ridership for each station. So such studies can help bike share operators mostly to make decision about the resource allocation. So you know that in which areas they should have more bike stations or add newer stations, for example, in some area, in some neighborhood that they haven't had before. But sometimes it is required to know the relationship between the bicycle infrastructure and the bike share demand. Those studies are to measure the marginal effects of improving bike lanes on bike share demand at network-wide levels, not the station level. And it will be over the time. For those type of studies, we should use the time series analysis, not the regression analysis. And such studies can help planning agencies, for example, cities, counties, or other agencies make decisions about bike facility investments and improvements, and also the prioritization, which types of facility they should improve. So basically the results of such studies it will be useful for planning agencies rather than the bike share operators. So goal of study is investigate the relationship between the bike share average daily trips and the lanes of bike lanes in Houston. Basically, we look at the impacts of the bike share on the bike lane, on the bike share activity on the network-wide levels over the time. And for achieving this goal, we have some objectives. We analyze the bike share trip activities overall. We model bike share average daily trips and related attributes based on the bike share trip activities, and also identify the important attributes that affect bike share demand. The study area for our project was Houston. In this map, you see that the bike lane or bicycle network map, different types of bike lanes in Houston we have, and you see that it has mostly in the inside the loops. And for bike share ridership data, we got the data from the Houston B-Cycle, the 2019 data. The data included trip ID, bike ID, user membership type, checkout date and time, return date and time, checkout station, return station, and trip duration. Those were the information in the data. The daily data were aggregated to weekly level to allow for reaction time to the new bike lane improvements, because people may not be immediately aware of a specific new bike lanes, and it takes some time to observe the influence in bike sharing ridership. So we aggregate the data to weekly data. This graph shows the bike share trips per week for the year 2019, and the graph that you see in the black color, it shows the total daily trips per week, and the other graph is average daily trips per week in 2019. For bicycle lane improvements data, we reach out to City of Houston and also Harris County. We received the data, basically the GIS layer file that they had. And from the GIS layer file, the attribute table of GIS, we extract the project name, project location, date of completion of those projects, type of facility, and lengths of the bicycle lanes. And when we calculated the total lengths, there were about 64 miles bicycle lane improvements or addition in the year 2019, by the end of 2019. So this graph shows the bicycle lane improvements by month, every month in 2019 from January to December. Every month, the lane improvement, it includes the new lanes and also improvements of the existing lanes. And because we wanted to look at the weekly, we we changed it to the weekly. Every week, how much improvements in the lanes we had through the for our project. And for this is like the variable description. We had the average daily trips per week, bicycle lane lengths, the total lengths of bicycle lengths in miles, and also we look at the active stations, the average number of daily active stations per week. So we model the time history, and we had the analysis. The results, the independent variables, bicycle lane lengths and active stations are here. I didn't include other parameters of the model in the table. Those are just the independent variables. And as you see, all independent variables are significant when we look at the considering the t-test in the model for 95 percentile, and their signs and magnitudes are as expected. They are positive signs. The length of the bicycle lanes and number of active daily bike shares stations have positive signs, as you see here, meaning that bicycle lane improvements attracted more cycling. And the result indicates that controlling for all other variables, if you control all other variables, one additional mile of bicycle lane that was built resulted on average in 51 trips, as you see here, 51.46 trips per day. And if we multiply by 7, it gives us 357 weekly trips. So this results give a good guidance to the city planner to see how much in the investments in the bike lane improvements will increase, how much trips for the bike share. But as you may notice that in the graph that I showed you that has the bike share trips per week, you see that there are some variations in the total daily trips or average daily trips here, and the variations have some reasons. The main reasons of those variations is the temperature. It can be the temperature, or if we have the rain during those times, that has negative impacts on the daily trip. So what we had in our analysis, we actually missed the data that are the parameters that was related to the excuse me, to the weather. Basically, the weather variables was not included in our study, so that was the part of the project that is ongoing. We are including the weather variables in our study right now, and the other thing is, if we actually, for each graph, the black graph that is the total daily trips, and also the other one that the average daily trips, if we separate them into weekdays and weekends, you see these graphs, for example, for the daily trips, total daily trips, you see that the trends are different. We have more demands for the during the weekday versus weekend, in terms of the total daily trips. And if we look at the average daily trips, we see that the weekends we have more demand in per day. So it means that the more people use bicycle during the weekend, probably in the parks for recreation. So that made us to think about to have the data, filter the data, and have two different data sets, one for weekly and one for weekend, and do the analysis, more analysis. So basically, if I summarize here, we are using different weather variables right now as ongoing study as factors for weekly ridership, that is temperature, precipitation, and wind speed. Those are the parameters that we will have in the model for independent variable in addition to the bike lane and the active bike station. And the data is filtered into two data sets. One is weekly and the other is weekend, and we will have the analysis, the time series analysis, to see what will be the impacts of the variables on the ridership. With this, I conclude my presentation. If there is any question, I would be glad to answer.
This is Randy. I'm curious, can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Machemehl.
Do you have e-scooters in Houston?
E-scooters, no.
Yeah.
We don't have public. Yes.
City of Austin requires that all of these vendors, whether they're leasing e-scooters or bicycles, have to keep records of the trips. And so the kind of data that I reported on earlier is available also here for bicycles, for the rent bicycles, dockable bicycles, as well as e-scooters. And interestingly enough, we looked at the Austin case, and about 95% of all the rentals were e-scooters.
Oh.
The e-scooters have sort of overcome the bicycles. Also, another comment, I noticed that you were going to include in your future work the effect of temperature and precipitation. I'll report on some more e-scooter work that we've done tomorrow, and we built those models, those things into our models, and it turns out that precipitation and temperature does have a significant impact on e-scooter rentals, as you would expect in this climate.
Yes, especially in Houston, we have flooding.
Oh yeah.
A lot of flooding problem in Houston. I don't know about the Austin, but Houston, it definitely has major impacts. Yes.
Yes. Nice study. Enjoyed listening to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, sir.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Azimi. Very nice. And so moving on in our agenda this morning, I'd like to welcome Dr. Carol Atkinson-Palombo from the University of Connecticut. She's going to be speaking with us about some evidence of ride sourcing being used for commuting in New York City's low-income communities. And it looks like Carol has already shared her screen, so I will turn it over to her. Carol, thank you for being here.
Great, thank you so much, Nick. I want to present this work, and it's really on behalf of two of my students who conducted the research under the supervision of myself and my colleague, Dr. Norman Garrick, who is in UConn's Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. So we started off with the broad research question of just what are the spatial and temporal patterns of ride sourcing use in the 5 boroughs of New York City, and how have they changed over time? And we were curious to look into this because around sort of for several years now, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding Uber and Lyft and the other providers that are in New York, specifically in relation to taxi drivers. So we were really curious about trying to understand those sort of broad patterns initially. So the data are quite limited. So they are provided to the Taxi and Limousine Commission, which is the entity that regulates the Uber and Lyft and other ride sourcing companies. But the actual amount of data or the amount of data fields that you get is very, very limited. So this is the data portal. You can get yellow taxis, green taxis, and there's really rich data in there about things like the pickup and drop off location to the latitude and longitude. There's information about the pricing, things like that. For the taxis, for the ride sourcing data, Uber and Lyft have been able to argue that they don't want to provide much information on their trips because they consider it to be proprietary, and they're worried about sort of competition, and they've managed to sort of get away with providing very little information about their trips. One of the things that's particularly difficult from a research perspective, and sort of I was getting very jealous looking at in particular the level of data that Randy had for the e-scooters, because we don't have anything like that for the Uber and Lyft trips. We just have trip aggregated, the location aggregated to a taxi.
It looks like we might have lost Carol. Oh, hi, Carol, you're back. It looks like you're muted.
Thank you. So thanks for that. Sorry, I got kicked off of Zoom. That hasn't happened before. Great.
I'm glad you made it back.
Thank you. So from the current slide. So in terms of the data, there were some data that were point data for pickup and drop off from 2014 to 2015. But after that, the companies just provided origin of the pickup by taxi zone. And then later on, they changed that to origin and pickup and drop off point. But it's really sparse compared to what you get for other emerging transportation technologies. So what we did is we tried to work with what we had in order to find out what was going on with these trips. And we decided to put together a geodatabase. So we used transportation options in the taxi zone. So we counted the number of bus stops, the number of subway stops, and the percentage of car-free households. We combined this with variables that represented land use mix and intensity. So we included things like population per square mile, jobs per square mile, and overall activity, which was population plus jobs per square mile. And we then also added some socioeconomic and demographic characteristics. And there's a list up here, it's fairly standard data from the US Census. And we put all of these into a geodatabase. And what we were trying to do is look at neighborhood or create neighborhood typologies. And I've put this racial dot density map here up just to sort of give you a sense of some of the segregation in New York. So it's really this the sort of Upper East Side. The wealthy Upper East Side is blue, which stands for white. You can see Chinatown here in yellow. You can see the new Chinatown that's emerged in Queens in red depicted there. And here we have Harlem, which is Latino and African American. So we wanted to we wanted to create a typology to look at all of these variables together. So once we compiled all the data into a geodatabase, we did some factor analysis to understand the correlation among the variables. We then did some cluster analysis to create groups of taxi zones that are more or less similar to one another in terms of the factors that were generated. And then we looked at the trips that took place within these different clusters to understand, to get a better sense of the picture of who was using or where these trips were taking place and in what kinds of neighborhoods. And this map here shows the clusters, a map of the clusters that we generated. So there are the cluster 1 in yellow, it's Manhattan. It's very high subway availability, mostly car-free households and majority white. I'll highlight the one in orange here. It's non-Manhattan, moderate subway. It's mostly car-free households and majority Latino. And it's also quite low income as well. And you see some similar types of neighborhoods over here in Queens and Brooklyn. So we essentially, so 1, 2, and 3 are primarily Manhattan, and then the outer borough neighborhoods are sort of, we're looking primarily at these 4, 5, 6, and 7 cluster IDs. And just to give you a little bit more texture on that, there's some data here that identifies the clusters. Cluster 7, I'll just sort of talk about briefly. There's sort of few subways, little bit of transportation, $65,000 median household income. It's primarily Black, and 39% households which are car-free. So it sort of contrasts with cluster 4, which has got a median household income of $36,000, 53% Latino, and 68% households car-free. So they're all sort of slightly different compositions. And this is what we were sort of thinking about them in terms of cluster 4, very low income Latino households in residential areas with little subway access. Cluster 7, cluster 7, fairly low income, but they're in transit deserts. And when we looked at the average daily trips and we just compared 2014 and 2017, we saw that essentially what we're seeing is the yellow taxi usage has gone down, as you can see from the sort of decline in these orange bars here, while ride sourcing just absolutely shot up. And it went from virtually nothing right up to the same amount of trips that were taken by taxis. And so there's a 1,600% increase in ride sourcing and a 46% increase in trips overall. And this might be what's causing some of the concern about increased congestion and the impetus from New York City to think about regulating ride sourcing. But if we look at it, in terms of the clusters, and this is where it's sort of interesting that we broke it down like this, we can see that in 2014, in clusters 1, 2, and 3 in Manhattan, it was primarily taxi use, and in 1, 2, and 3 in 2017, you can see that there was that replacement with ride sourcing. In cluster areas 4 through 8, which are all the outer borough neighborhoods, there was very little taxi use. And it was sort of, the increase in ride sourcing was sort of additional trips. So when we look at this, we can sort of say ride sourcing is replacing yellow taxis in Manhattan during the time period that we looked at, but in the outer boroughs, ride sourcing services exploded to 215,000 trips per day, which was a 33-fold increase. And when we broke it down like this, we can see that 55% of all ride sourcing trips originate in the outer boroughs. And that led us to then think is that ride sourcing services may be filling a gap in mobility. So in a second research study, we did some more detailed analysis for day of the week and time of day patterns for these trips. And we compared the outer boroughs to the trips in Manhattan. And we also dug into looking at what are the origin and destination characteristics of trips for these different time periods. So when we looked at trip patterns overall, you could see that there was a lot of emphasis in the outer borough areas, and most of the trips take place within the outer boroughs. So this chart here shows in red the proportion of trips taking place. So a lot of them are taking place in the morning commute time period and the afternoon commute time period from one outer borough neighborhood to other outer borough neighborhoods. Within Manhattan, that's happening also within Manhattan to a lesser degree. That's all depicted in blue, but there's very little commute. There's very few trips that take place on a relative basis from Manhattan to the outer boroughs and from the outer boroughs to Manhattan. And those that do take place are sort of skewing towards the evening. So this again reinforced the idea that ride sourcing may be being used for commuting in the outer boroughs. So we had one of our students, Annika Maher, who has now, who has since graduated, do some analysis of the data in Python and come up with the sort of some time of day patterns by aggregating all of the trips. And I think altogether there were about 10 million trips. So it was quite a lot of data processing. But you can see if you look at this Monday to Thursday, you can see this blip during the morning commute times in the outer boroughs. So that again reinforced the idea that we were looking at potentially commuting. And that was for pickups, and this one is for drop-off. So it's sort of very similar. We then had Annika do some coding where she was looking at different taxi zone areas, and she was selecting one of the taxi zones. You can see this in highlighted in blue. This one is Forest Hills, and it's just an example. And she selected that, and then for the morning commuting time periods, this is the destination. So people going from this Forest Hills taxi zone, this is where they were traveling to. So you can see that it's sort of proximate, well, primarily within the taxi zone, but you can see a strong distance decay effect where a lot of the trips are in adjacent taxi zones. And the same, this is the origins of the commute, same thing. Lots of, for this specific taxi zone, lots of trips originating during the afternoon commute in this specific taxi zone and in adjacent taxi zones. And a similar thing, she also looked at Brighton Beach as an example. You can see a strong sort of localized pattern there. And again, this one's in Queens. You can see sort of very, very similar, except a little bit. I think this one was interesting from the point of view that there may be some of this sort of evening commuting going on. Evening usage of ride sourcing. So we did have a follow-up planned to this study. And then the question that we were addressing with that was going to be, who was using ride sourcing in low-income neighborhoods? For what purpose? What transportation options is it replacing? How do people pay for the services? And how are they exposed are they to surge pricing? So we did the IRB paperwork for this, and we were working with the Tri-State Transportation Commission and set up a bunch of focus groups. And unfortunately, the research was supposed to take place over spring break of this year, and we were unable to do it because of the pandemic. But we're hoping to get that back up and running once we're able to run the focus groups, because we think that this mixed methods approach to looking at this question is what's really needed because of the limitations on the quantitative data side. So what we're planning on doing is focus groups in these neighborhoods to get some texture. So I'll leave it there and ask if anybody has any questions. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much, Carol.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. All right, so we can, we'll move on to our final speaker of this session, Dr. Yi Chi from Texas Southern University, who will be presenting work on the development of a progression-based signal timing strategy for continuous flow intersections. So Dr. Chi, if you would like to share your screen.
Okay. Can let's all see the presentation? So let me go back to okay. Okay. So can you see the screen?
Sure can. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. And today I'm going to introduce the research we have done related to the signal timing design for continuous flow intersections. If you remember, last year in the symposium, I present the safety performance research we conducted for the continuous flow intersections. So our team was continue work on this innovative intersection design, and we have some interesting results about the signal timing for this type of intersections. So I would like to share with you today. First, here's outline for my presentation. So first, I will give you a brief background introduction. Start your video. Start my video. Okay. Everything was okay. I'm still in the line. Hello. Okay. Can everyone still hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Because I saw a message pop out, so I was, did I drop? Okay, okay, good, thanks. So I will talk about the background of this research, and basically I will talk about why we do this research, the needs for this research. Then we will talk about our research objectives and the methodology we use, and also we will conduct a case study to show the results of our research. Then I will present the conclusions. Okay, so first, let me give you a brief introduction about what is the continuous flow intersections. The continuous flow intersections is also called displayed left intersection. This is an innovative intersection design. It's mainly for the intersection that have like heavy left volume. So the basic idea is before the left vehicle reaches the intersection, at some upstream location, we relocate this left turn traffic to the most left side of the streets. So in this way, when the left turn vehicle arrived at the intersection, they can move together with the through vehicle because they're already in the most left side. So there's no conflict between left and opposing through traffic at the main intersection. So in this way, at the main intersection, we can use a two-phase signal design. So we can let more traffic move together and use the signal timing more efficiently and increase the capacity and operational efficiency of the intersection. So this is the whole idea of this new design. So this new design first was implemented in Mexico in 1980s. And right now in the United States, we have more places use this design. We have about 12 states use this new, this innovative intersection design. As I introduced in the last year, there's 2 locations in Texas. San Marcos recently implemented this new design. Okay, so let's talk about why we need to do this research. So when we work on this new intersection design, one thing we find is first, the signal timing is very important for this new design because there's 5 intersections in this whole whole system. We call it the system. The main intersection in the middle, and then at the location we move the vehicle to the most left side. We call the some study called the left turn crossover location. In this study we call it the minor intersection. So this minor intersection we also have a signal. So basically we have 4 minor intersections around this main intersection. So the totally the whole system different intersection. So this 5 intersections have to be signalized coordinately in order for them to work with each other. Otherwise, queue will build up between the intersection, will block the entrance, block the operation of intersections. So we'll make the whole system not work as we expected. So that's why the signal time is very important. But because of the new design, especially in this country, it's relatively new. So there's lack of comprehensive or user-friendly guidelines we can find for the signal timing design for this new intersection. We have some research report, like FHWA have a research report about the innovative intersection design. They talk about the signal timing a little bit. They give some example signal timing, but there's no detailed step how they develop the signal timing. So this is like very general guidelines. There's no no detail. If we got a new intersection with the traffic volume and the geometric condition, we don't know how we can develop this detailed single timing plan for this type of intersection. Okay, so this is the one thing. Then we also searched some research papers. So when we try to find from the journal paper what the people did for this signal timing. So what we found, the most of existing studies, the academic studies, they use optimization based method to do the signal timing, to design the signal timing for this type of intersection. Okay, so that's some problem with this kind of approach. When we review these papers, this paper usually have like, they set up an objective function. The objective function is to minimize the delay or maximize the capacity for the intersection. Then they set up a bunch of constraints, like they consider the constraints, the capacity constraints, the traffic flow relationship constraints, the geometric design constraints, and also the signal timing constraints. So sometimes, usually it's have like 20, 30 constraints. Sometimes it's have 100 constraints. So the model itself is very complicated. I think it's too complicated for the transportation practitioner to use this model. And another problem is for this academic model is they mainly based on some, they have the objective function. So this objective function is to calculate delay. So the delay was calculated based on some analytical models. And this analytical model was not designed for calculating the delay in such a complex intersections. They are mainly designed for the simple conventional intersection. So they have lots of assumptions to simplify the model. And they cannot model the Q spillback between the intersections, like the Q spillback from the main intersection to the minor intersection, the Q spillback will from the minor intersection to the main intersection. All this delay causes this kind of Q spillback was not able to be accurately modeled by these delay models. Okay, so that's why the base for the optimization model may not very solid. So it causes the optimization results not very reliable. So this is one problem we find. The major problem we find, because for this design is, as I mentioned, there's 5 different intersections and they are very closely spaced. So the signal coordination will be the most important factor we should consider when we design the signal timing for the whole system, because the whole system have to be operated, that the people can go through this multiple intersection with less delay and less stop. Like the vehicle approaches the intersection, if they saw the green lights, they expect they can continue move through the whole intersection. If you let them stop, it will cause lots of problems. As I mentioned in the last, in my safety study, if they already passed the left-hand side and they are expected they can continue move. If they all of a sudden they stop in the main intersection, it causes the rear end crash, also cause the people run cross the red lights. Okay, so this things we find for the single timing design problem for this type of intersection. So the objective for our research is to develop a new strategy on design the single timing for the continuous flow intersection. We mainly consider the traffic flow progressing, the coordination between different intersections. Okay, so this is the key idea. So for this type of intersection, there's lots of different traffic flow, but there's 2 major traffic flow. One is this display the left-hand traffic flow. As I mentioned, the left-hand vehicle will move to the most left side, then they will move and then make a left at the main intersection. So another traffic flow is the through flow from the main intersection. Okay, so these are 2 major traffic flow. So in this graph, I indicated these 2 major flow in one direction. Actually, this is for all the directions. All 4 directions, they have these 2 major traffic flow. So the whole idea of our design, we want to make sure these 2 major traffic flow can go through the intersection with less delay and less stop. That means they can pass the intersection, in all green lights. If they see one green light, they will go to next intersection, also see the green lights. So that's the whole design idea. Okay, so in order to make it work with the methodology we choose is a very traditional signal, coordination analysis. So usually the signal coordination analysis use this diagram, and but we found that for this particular situation, we need to analyze the coordination not for one movement, one approach. We need to analyze the coordination for different approach and the different movements. So we find a method used by one TTI research. They developed a report to analyze the signal coordination between the diamond interchanges. We know the diamond interchange also have multiple intersections, have two intersections very closely spaced. So they use this this type of signal timing diagram-based time space diagram to do the coordination analysis. So we think it's a very useful tool. So we used the same method in our study to analyze the signal coordination between the two intersections. Okay, so I will not go to very detail about the technology. I don't want to bore you, but just give you a main idea. So basically, we analyze the signal coordination for these two major floors. First is the display, the left traffic flow. So we draw the signal diagram. What we got is in order for the traffic flow move through intersection, like in the perfect coordinated condition, that means when the left moves through the left and cross over the minor intersection, they will move to the main intersection. Then the green lights for the main intersection will turn on when they arrive at the main intersection. So we need to coordinate these two intersections in this way. So the offset is determined by the distance for the vehicle travel from the minor intersection to the main intersection. So this is the OL1 is the distance they travel from the minor to the main intersection. So this offset was determined. Then when we consider the next traffic flow is the through traffic flow, we find that the offset was also determined based on the travel time the vehicle travels through the main intersection to the minor intersection. So we want the vehicle pass the main intersection. When they arrive at the minor intersections, they also can see the green lights turn on. So we determine the second offset like this. So we put both diagrams together. What we found is, okay, so if you want to have like ideal coordination for these two major flows, basically the signal timing for the signal phase, the left-hand phase, the amount of green time we give to the left-hand vehicle move to the most left side in this minor intersection was already determined by this offset, by this coordination requirements. So basically, the length of this phase, the left-hand phase, will equal to the both travel time. Okay, the travel time from the minor street to the main street, and the travel time from the main intersection to the minor intersection. So we will determine the sum of this travel time, and we also deduct a little bit time called the advanced green time to make sure the green lights will turn a little bit early, so the vehicle will see the green lights before they arrive at the intersection, so they don't need to slow down, so they can continue move at their the speed to pass the intersection. So the major idea is, if we fully consider the coordination between these two intersections, basically at the minor intersection, the phase 3, the phase to move the left traffic to the left side is totally determined by the travel time between these two intersections. Okay, so this is the idea. Okay, so then because of this, so based on this idea, we can design the signal timing for the whole system. But this idea also have something we need to consider. Some constraint we have to consider, because we determine the signal timing based on the coordination, not based on the traffic volume. Okay, so I mean the minor intersection. For the main intersection, we still based on the traffic volume to split the green time. But in the minor intersection, we determine the green time mainly based on the signal coordination. Then here comes one thing we have to consider, the constraint 1. We want to make sure the green time we provide in this minor intersection can handle all the left-hand traffic. It's enough for the demand that to move through the left. So we have to check if this constraint was met or not. But most cases, this constraint will met. I will talk about in our case study, because the travel time between these two intersections usually like they have 200 or 300 distance. So you double the travel time. The travel time is not very short, and it will provide enough green time for this left movement. Okay, so this is the first constraint we should check. So if this constraint is not working, we have to increase the left. Either let the left turn start early, or we can let the left turn phase extend a little bit. In both cases, we don't have ideal coordination between these two intersections. So the vehicle either will have to wait at the main intersection, or the vehicle from the main intersection have to wait at the minor intersection. So, but it's depend on which movement have more traffic, more congestion, so we determine which direction we should move the phase to make sure it can accommodate all the left vehicles. Okay, so this is constraint one. Then the second constraint, as we see in this, because the left phase was determined by the coordination at the minor intersection. At the minor intersection, the signal split is between the left turn and the through movement. There's only two movements split the signal phase. So if we design the phase for the left turn based on the coordination, at the same time, the phase for the through vehicle also determined, because the cycle length should be the fixed number, because of the whole system, if you want them coordinated, you have to have fixed the cycle length. So in this way, the phase for moving the through traffic also determined by the coordination, the signal coordination. Then the question is phase 4 is big enough to handle all the through movement? Because mainly the through movement is come from the major intersection, the main intersection for the phase 2. The phase 2, the through movement from the main intersection will arrive at the minor intersection as the phase 4 movement. So we want to make sure the phase 4 in the minor intersection should be bigger than phase 2. Then all the traffic moves through the main intersection will have enough green time to move through the minor intersection. So this the second constraints we consider in our signal design. Okay, so if this constraints was not met, so we will either increase the phase 2, okay, to to make the phase 2 bigger than phase, increase phase 4 to make the phase 4 bigger than the phase 2, or we can reduce the phase 2. The either side have some side effects. If we do the first approach, we will not have the ideal coordination. So see there's some gaps here, so the coordination is not perfect. If we do the phase 2, that means we control the demand in the main intersection. That may cause some delay in the main intersection. Okay, so this is mainly design idea. So we put them together in the whole graph. You can see our design idea. The first, for the main intersection, we design the signal timing according to the traffic volume. We split the signal timing in the main intersection according to traffic volume. Then we determine the minor intersection signal timing mainly based on the signal coordination. So we put both, this is the east and the west side minor intersection, this is the north and the south side minor intersection. So in this way, the whole system, the whole 5 intersection signal timing can be designed. Okay, so this is the procedure we proposed, and we develop a step-by-step flow chart to see how the traffic engineering can follow this procedure to design a particular signal timing for the continuous flow intersections. Okay, so in order to test if our idea works or not, we did a case study. Okay, the case study we did is we use an example provided by Synchro. Synchro is a signal timing design software, and it has some examples for different types of intersection. So for the continuous flow intersection, Synchro also provides an example. So in this example, it has the detailed traffic volume, the geometric design. It also provides a pre-configured, we call it default signal timing for this intersection. The default signal timing, it's not optimizing signal timing, but it works at this location. It have reasonable, delay and congestion at this location. So we use this example location to test our idea. So what we did is we changed the single timing, okay, from the default to the single timing plan we developed according to our method. And also we also want to test the optimization based method, because synchro itself has some optimization too, allow you to optimize the single timing according to the traffic delay. So they based on the traffic delay model they optimize the single timing for the intersection. So basically we change the single timing for this intersection by using the synchro optimize the single timing. Second, we use the single timing we proposed. Okay, then we run the traffic simulation in the vSim, and we based on traffic simulation results, you can see, so there's the comparison for the performance of this intersection with different single timing strategy. So this dark bar is the single timing we proposed, and this green bar is the default single timing without any optimization. And this is shadowed, the patterned bar is the optimized single timing strategy used by the synchro. So by the comparison, you can see we compared the average queue length, the traffic delay, and the average travel time. So from this graph, you can see basically the default have longer length, more delay, and longer travel time compared with other two single timing strategy. The optimization makes things a little bit better compared with the default. But if you use the single timing strategy we developed, you can see the queue length, delay, and travel time all reduced significantly compared with other two, single timing method. And then in order to, because this is just one case, so we want to see if our strategy works in different conditions. So we literally change we deliberately change the traffic volume at this location. We want to see if the single timing works at like the congested intersection or less congested intersection. So we change the left volume from 50% of the original value to the 150% of original value. We also changed the through traffic volume from the 50% to the 150%. So here is the results. In these results, we only compared our single timing with the synchro optimized single timing, because every time you change the single traffic volume, you re-optimize the single timing at this location. So we compared the traffic delay when the through traffic amount was changed. We also compared the traffic delay when the left-hand traffic was increased. So you can see this solid line is the modeling result, is the results of our single timing strategy. You can see using our single timing strategy, the delay was less than using this optimize the single timing strategy, especially when the traffic volume was increased, like more and the intersection become more and more congested. Our single timing works better. It's because we consider the coordination. So there will be less chance the queue will build up between the two intersections, will block the operation of each intersection. So that's cause our single timing work better than the optimized based single timing. And we also, the same thing for the travel time comparison and the queue length comparison. All these results indicate our single timing works better. Okay, then for all this scenario, we find the perfect coordinate system, the condition we mentioned, the equation, like the constraint one, this condition are met. Even we increase the left turn to the 150%, we still meet this constraint one. So we want to see if this constraint was not met, we don't have perfect coordination if the solution we propose, adjust the single timing will work or not. So we continue increase the left turn traffic volume to 300%. At this point, the constraint one was not working. So we have to adjust the single timing for the phase 3, the left turn, the display the left turn phase. Okay, so once we do this, we adjust the single timing according to the strategy we propose. We redo the simulation and we redo the comparison. We find our model works even better than before. So we have much less delay and the Q-length than the the synchro optimized signal timing strategy. Okay, so all this testing indicate the strategy we proposed works very well for this case study. So here is the conclusion. Okay, so I mentioned we did the case study and we show the results. Our results constantly outperform the synchro optimized signal timing developed for this location with different traffic conditions. So the key points I want to make. So this study verified our idea. The traffic progressing or the signal coordination should be the most important factor when we design the signal timing for the continuous follow intersections. Because at this innovative design, there's 5 closely spaced signal-less intersections. These 5 intersections have to be designed to operate at one system. In this case, the vehicle can go through the whole system with less delay and less stop. So this is the key points we want to make based on this research findings. Any questions? Oh.
This is Randy.
Hey, Randy.
I wonder if TxDOT is about to implement your progression concept.
I hope so. Yeah, this I want to promote because we just finished this study, and I submit a paper, and I also want to submit some results to the TxDOT people to let them to take a look at. Hopefully, they will adopt it.
Great, great, nice work.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Chi. And thank you all for being here with us this morning. And hopefully see you in some of the other CAMMSE Symposium sessions. And I hope you all have a great day and a successful rest of the semester and year. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everybody, all the presenters. Hey, Dr. Machemehl, do you want to start at 11 sharp or 11:10?
We can probably do 11. 11 would be fine. I think that's pretty much reasonable.
Okay, so we will take a 12 minutes break. We come back 11 sharp. Thank you all. Yeah.